The pressure is on this week for a deal to be cut on the national broadband network that should deliver high-speed broadband to 93% of households. Telstra and NBN Co are said to be close to an agreement on selling Telstra's copper network ahead of the telco giant's results on Thursday. Also, federal parliament will this week begin debating legislation on the $36 billion project. In a moment, we'll hear from the Communications Minister, Stephen Conroy. But first, Emily Stewart reports on the critics who just don't buy the idea.
It's supposed to bring Australians closer together.
And business is done in real time.
But big divisions remain over the national broadband network.
I don't support the NBN. I think it doesn't offer value for money. It's a very cost-intensive way of meeting broadband requirements.
Essentially, it's not needed. It's not needed. And look around the world. Who else is doing this kind of thing?
But the chief executive of AAPT, Paul Broad, says the government has listened to some of the industry's concerns.
Recent changes to the points of interconnect has been a really big step forward, and I think the industry is far more behind today than it might have been.
The Parliament will be debating access arrangements for the broadband network this week.
There's certainly been no shortage of arm twisting here, and again what's happened is that the whole telecommunications public policy agenda has been distorted by a government which is determined to get this deal through for political reasons. They've promised a broadband network, and that is now the whole driver of their broadband policy. And the long-standing bipartisan commitment to competition has effectively been thrown out the window.
While the opposition wouldn't outline what amendments it will suggest, analysts had a fair idea of the sticking points.
The main one seems to be to make sure that the cherry-picking constraints, the proposed levy on competitors to NBN, doesn't unnecessarily constrain industry development infrastructure rollout.
The opposition has also got to, and I believe they're going to, ensure there's some degree of scrutiny, freedom of information, some oversight of the NBN, rather than the only oversight at the moment are the rather perfunctory appearances at Senate estimate committees, where you don't get a great deal of information in reality.
Telstra releases its half-year results on Thursday, but the focus will be on the $9 billion deal for the NBN to buy Telstra's fixed-line assets.
And the question for shareholders, and I would imagine particularly for some of the larger shareholders, is does it make sense to effectively give away a large proportion of the business in exchange for the compensation that is to be received?
Frankly, I think that Telstra shareholders are being dudded. I think it's a very poor deal for them.
And there are concerns that the NBN's virtual monopoly on infrastructure will lead to a rise in costs and push service providers out of the market.
Many of those smaller service providers will not stay in the market. There'll be significant consolidation. You can already see it happening. And you might end up with 7 or 8 big players who will dominate the market totally. Very little room for smaller players.
And with Telstra foreshadowing it will not compete aggressively in the growing wireless technology market, analysts say competition and growth in that market will also be restricted.